What's going on, Real Talkers? Welcome to the David Greene Show. I've got a good interview for everybody today. I'm going to be speaking with Elijah Underwood, a real estate broker and attorney, about something that you may not have heard about before, but there's a good chance you'll need. If you've ever heard about partnerships, you've been told that if you don't know how to invest, you should find a partner. Are you scared to invest? You should find a partner. Do you have no money, no experience, no clue what you're doing? Just find a partner and you can buy real estate. Well, what happens when that partnership doesn't work out and needs to be dissolved? Elijah is here to share with us something that he specializes in, which is dissolving partnerships that have gone bad or people just want to go their separate ways. Elijah, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here, David.
Yeah. Did I miss anything in the intro about what you do? Do we need to add anything about what you specialize in?
I think it's a really nice introduction. I think it's not just people who buy real estate together, but also people who inherit real estate together. People who may have acquired real estate from family, things like that, or other people who are looking to get into real estate and see its benefits, but probably need to think about some of the downsides, right? I think all of us go into these relationships, whether it's a partnership or, an investment with the best of hopes. But as a lawyer, unfortunately, what I see is when they break down and when they don't work out. And so it's about thinking through how not only to get into the relationship, but, ways things could not work out. And then if you find yourself in a relationship like this, how you can find an exit. Because a lot of people, they'll get in the relationship with best intentions, and then they say, oh my gosh, I got in, but I don't know how to get out. So I really enjoy helping people escape from really bad real estate relationships.
So you're like a divorce attorney, but only for real estate deals.
I'm a real estate divorce attorney. That's basically it. You hit the nail on the head.
All right. Well, in most podcasts, people hear about ways that they can get into real estate. It's always about acquisitions, how to get a deal, how to find a deal. You rarely hear people talk about what to do once you got it. And even more rare do you hear people talk about what to do when the deal starts to stink. But that happens a lot. It just isn't talked about. So why don't we start off by you explaining maybe some of the different types of partnerships that you see and some things that people should be aware of if they're going to get into a partnership with somebody else?
Yeah, 100%. So I think just to kind of set the table, what we've seen in the last 25 years, not only in real estate, but kind of, more broadly, I'm based in California, is, the baby boomers are moving on, and there's been this huge transfer of wealth that's happening, across generations, inherited wealth. There's also this big trend where people are not getting married as frequently as they used to. In like 1980, like 85% of people are married, and 2024 it's like 40%. It's basically half. And then the third thing is, with all of the run up in housing prices across the country, lots of people are looking for unique ways to invest in real estate together. And so the sum total of all those things, whether it's brother and sister inherit mom and dad's house, or boyfriend and girlfriend buy a house together. They're not husband and wife, but boyfriend and girlfriend buy a house together. And then, or there's these real estate development relationships. People find themselves trapped. Things go south. Somebody is maybe not totally ethical, or somebody is, abusive, or you just, life changes and you begin to have different ideas about what to do with the real estate. So in these different instances, inherited property purchased with a significant other, or investment property, people need to know about ways to escape when it gets south, because unfortunately not everything works out like we always intend. And so in California, where I practice law, the only legal method, if there's not an LLC or specific partnership agreement or trust, the only way is something called partition law.
Okay, what's partition law?
Yeah, so it's very simple. It's kind of like the word suggests, right? So partition comes from the word parts, and it used to be back in old England, when you inherited property with your brother, 80 acres of a farm, you could go to a judge and say, hey, listen, I don't really get along with my brother anymore. I'd like you to cut the property in half. Give me the front 40, give him the back 40. I don't care, I love him, but I just don't want to be in business with him anymore. Well, in 2024, most of us don't live on farms. We live in single-family, detached ranch-style houses. So a judge is not going to physically divide the property in half, but what the judge will do is say, hey, listen, you two are not getting along. You inherited, mom and dad's house. we're going to sell the property and we're going to divide the equity into parts. We're going to partition the equity in different parts as an exit from this relationship, and take your money, take your half the inheritance and go your own way, whatever that is. But that way you guys don't have to fight anymore over this asset.
Now, does that mean the property has to be sold in order for them to capitalize on that equity?
Not necessarily. There is a provision under the law, depending on how title is held, that does allow for one of them to purchase the other one's interest.
Okay.
And that's traditionally been the state of the law in California. There was an update in 2023 to make that a little bit more specific. But basically, there is a buyout provision that's allowed once one of these actions is begun.
All right. So there is going to be some form of a dissolution of the partnership through either selling the property or one person buying the other out. The judge decides each person's equity. So now you know how much to buy somebody out for. What about when you're getting into the deal? Is there any advice you have for people that are like, no, we still want to go the partnership route, to where they can maybe plan ahead so that you don't end up in a mess where somebody has to come in and try to clean it up and get a literal judgment?
Yeah, definitely. And again, my firm comes into play, and we help people not only where there's not an agreement in place, but also where the parties can't get along, right? There's differing ideas about what to do with it or how to resolve the differences. Sometimes there's strong personalities. But to answer your question, yeah, the simple answer is a partnership agreement, and it's sitting down and thinking through in a very adult manner. What does an exit look like? If we can't get along, sometimes it's not necessarily a personality issue. It's, hey, listen, two guys buy some property together for development. One of them gets divorced, from his wife, and then his plans change financially, and he needs an alternative. Because of how his life has changed. And so, that's also a facet of this. Life just affects us all.
All right. So what's it typically like when somebody comes to you? Give me some stories of people that have come your way. I can imagine that they're probably colorful.
Yeah, there's all sorts of issues from, couples who get together in anticipation of marriage. Some may even have kids. People who invest in real estate thinking that they've got a great idea for, some sort of vacation rental. That doesn't work out. Some individuals who they inherit mom and dad's house, and maybe there's dispute about an ancillary issue. And so they come to me and they say, hey, listen, this other person, and maybe it's personal reasons, right? My sister's mad at me because I got the big bedroom growing up. Or my boyfriend's mad at me because I'm keeping the dog or whatever it is, and there's these little sticking points that prevent people from reaching agreement, and so generally when they come to me, it's progressed to a very hot point, and I really enjoy helping people get out of these situations so they can move on with their lives.
All right, so if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I bought a house with my girlfriend, we broke up, I want to keep it, she wants to sell it, I want to invest into it, she doesn't have any money to invest into it, it doesn't look like this is going to work, what steps would you take with these people to help figure out how you're going to dissolve it?
Yeah, so the first thing always is, a lawyer is a tool of last resort. Lawsuits are not fun for anybody. They can be very expensive. So I always say to people, hey, listen, have you talked to them? What is the state of things? Do you think talking more would help instead of just, hauling off and hiring a lawyer? Can you guys work it out, even if, maybe it's not precisely what you would like or what you have an entitlement under the law? Is there something that can break the logjam? So trying to work through this at a lower level is always encouraged. But if they can't, I'll have a frank conversation about, what the law provides. So for example, I'll see situations where one person says, hey, listen, I provided, all of the down payment, but she insists that we split everything 50-50. That feels very unfair. Right. So I'll say, hey, listen, this is how the law reads in terms of claims for contribution for reimbursement, and outline, what they're likely to recover, if they're comfortable with that recovery, given, the time and stress of litigation. Really people generally proceed only when it doesn't make sense not to proceed. In other words, that they would be giving so much up and leaving so much on the table not to say, not even to consider how embarrassing they would feel to totally give in to their ex, that they say, hey, listen, let's get this started. Hopefully this, just filing a lawsuit itself will break the logjam and bring people to their senses.
So when they come to their senses, are you usually kind of acting as a mediator? Are you hearing about who brought in how much money and recommending, I think you guys should split it up this way?
Generally, I am an advocate for my clients. And so what I'll try to say to the other side, we start every lawsuit with a letter to them that says, hey, listen, you can stop the lawsuit right now. You can get out of this right now. We don't need to litigate this. Let's work out a settlement that is reasonable based on what the law provides. You're asking for X, but the law says really, you only have a right to Y. Let's not spend any more money on this than we have to. And when that offer isn't accepted, we say, okay, if we can't talk to you, if we can't get you to be reasonable, we'll go to the judge and we'll ask him or her to just enforce the law and provide for the sale of the property, and you'll get what you have an entitlement to. But at the very least, our clients are able to get relief. They're not, many times, David, they've been in these situations not for 3 months or 6 months. They said, I've been talking to my ex-girlfriend about this house for like 5 years, and I can't get her to budge. So now I kind of have to do this, especially if that house is necessary to buy another house. If they're still on the mortgage for that house, they can't qualify for another house. Even if the ex-girlfriend is paying the mortgage every month, they're not going to qualify with their credit to maybe buy another house with their new wife or whatever it is. So by selling this house and enforcing this buyout, it kind of allows them to move on.
Okay, I get a better understanding. So you're not someone that people come to as a pair or together. This is where one of the partners says, hey, I need to get out of this thing, or I need to get my money out. They're fighting me. I need counsel on my side to protect me here.
100%.
Okay. So you're sort of speaking to the other partner on behalf of your client, trying to offer a solution that your client's going to be happy with. If it doesn't happen, it's going to go to court, and you're going to be representing your client and representing their stake in this partnership.
100%. I was in court this morning in LA representing a sister who inherited an apartment building with her brother in Santa Monica. And there's lots of questions about, well, the brother's been managing it. Where's the rent going? Who's living there? Where are the records for everything that's happening? Has everything been done on the up and up with this apartment building they inherited, like 7 years ago, right? Because it's easy to think about, well, there's just mom and dad's house, but there's all sorts of different types of inherited real estate. I mean, I've represented people who inherited, warehouses, thousands of square feet of warehouse space in Northern California. So it's all different asset classes, single family, multifamily, commercial, industrial, where things are, kind of messy. And yeah, when you're talking about $20 million in warehouse space, it's of a different flavor than, mom and dad's house in San Mateo or whatever it is.
All right, Elijah, I am getting ready to buy a property with a partner. I've listened to this podcast, and I don't want to make the mistakes that I've heard people talking about. I come to you, and I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about putting this partnership together. What are some of the things that you're going to tell me and help me do? Is it going to be put into the operating agreement? Are you going to have the articles of incorporation drafted up differently? Tell me, what should I know before I get into this? And when I come to an Elijah to help me draft up the partnership, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, 100%. It's a good question. Well, I think I would probably start by asking you a few questions. So for example, what type of property are we discussing? Are we talking about just a single family home that maybe is in San Francisco we're going to rent as an Airbnb? Are we talking about a commercial office space that we're going to use to house an operating business? Who's gonna manage that business or that property once it's purchased? What are the contributions going to be? So for example, let's say you're going to purchase an old apartment building in San Francisco and you're going to fix it up. What happens if somebody, you have the purchase money, but what happens if somebody fails to make the contributions, right? Your plan is, okay, we're going to buy this apartment building for, I don't know, let's say $4 million, $2 million a piece, right? Assuming no financing. What happens if it turns out the plumbing is really bad, or that there's some dry rot in the walls between the units? How are those contributions going to work? If somebody, what I see a lot of is somebody saying, okay, well, I'm going to be, the capital partner, another person is going to be the operating partner, right? What is the value of the operating contributions, right? How are we going to value that? If you say, well, I'm going to put in sweat equity, well, what's the value of that? What happens if the capital partner can't make their capital contributions? What does that mean for the operating partners share of the equity, right? If they're continuing to perform and the capital partner is not, how does that affect things between them, right? How is that going to be calculated, right? So it's not just necessarily documenting everything that's going to be done, but coming up for a system to resolve it, a process to resolve how things will be calculated further in the future that no one may be able to anticipate. So I think just thinking through some of those things, and if there's a need for an exit on one side or the other, the capital partner says, hey, operating partner, I haven't seen you working for the last 6 months. You're supposed to show up every day and make sure it's swept or whatever it is. We're figuring out a way to handle those issues. So those would be just off the top of my head, a few of the things that I think are relevant.
Now, are you going to help the person who comes to you structure it in their advantage? Like, is there a way that they can say, hey, if you don't do X, then Y will occur and I'll be protected with this provision?
Generally, what I do is I work on the exit side of things, but I think in terms of protecting yourself, I think the biggest thing is just accuracy, right? Like there'll be just, because people will say, well, let's invest in this property, and let's say everything goes great for years, for 20 years, but then later on there's a dispute, and as our memories all fade, well, how much did you put in 2000 or 1999, right, into the building? What was your initial investment? Well, who did pay for the improvements to the sewer or to the roof? And bank records typically go back only 7 years. I mean, our documents now are a lot better than they used to be. But I mean, if we're talking about something that was 15 years ago and exactly how everything was going to shake out, it's really just a matter of, keeping good records. And maybe if you're talking about $50 here or $75 there, it doesn't matter. But when you're talking about $25,000 or $75,000, you'd be surprised how many people just they do it on a handshake, and then it becomes a problem much later on when people remember things differently.
All right, that's a great point. So we know that we're not supposed to do it on a handshake, but that's going to happen because when you do it, you have a good relationship with the person. The assumption is it will stay good. So is this a thing where people need to create like maybe a Google document, and every time they pay for something, write something in that Google Doc so that they now know what date it was paid for and they can find it in their bank records easier?
Yeah, Google Docs are a great tool. The only issue with those documents that I've experienced is that they can be edited very easily, right? So the question is, has this document been edited later, and is somebody going to say, well, no, they changed it to alter the contributions? And so it's really just about, I don't know, putting it into a format that everybody has access to that is locked in a sense, right? So Google Docs are great for collaboration, but at least from my experience, there's other formats that I would prefer for making sure that everything is written in stone, as it were.
So what formats do you prefer?
I'm a big fan of PDFs, although obviously those can be edited. It's nice to have copies of checks. I mean, even though a lot of us, don't use checks anymore, you can have bank records from your own personal bank account to show transfers. If there's a bank account for the partnership, making sure that that those records are maintained. And that can be one of the person's jobs, right? The operating partner, hey, your job is to make sure that there's good records every single year of everything. You could also leave them with an accountant or some sort of tax professional, as like a neutral third party that everybody agrees on, to make sure that everything's on the up and up.
Good, good. All right. So what are some of the common things that you've seen that people have screwed up, that when you're like, hey, I'm trying to represent you, but you're not doing yourself any favors with the way you went about this?
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think that it starts often with parents who are thinking about leaving real estate to their children. I'm really, as a result of this podcast I used to listen to, that you were in, I went out and bought an apartment building a number of years ago, and I hope to have that for many, many years and maybe leave it to my family. But if you're talking about investing in single family homes, it turns out that only one family at a time can live in a house. And, whereas before, maybe a house in, I don't know, Pasadena, you could buy it for $100,000. Now that house is worth like 3.1 million, right? And if you leave it to son and daughter 50-50, only one family is gonna live in that house realistically. And so thinking through, okay, if I leave this asset, how does that work out? Is there an asset I can leave to son and then an asset I can leave to daughter? So that's the biggest thing that where people have an opportunity to handle this better. Also with, a boyfriend and girlfriend situation, just making a simple agreement. Hey, if we break up, here's how the buyout will occur. Here's what we'll do. When we're no longer in the honeymoon phase, and here's how we'll handle it. So really, just making a plan. But to the earlier point, the biggest problem I see is people not keeping records of anything and saying, well, they know. Ask them. They'll tell you that I spent X, Y, and Z, and you ask that other person, and they have a very different history to go on.
So when it comes to keeping these records, you said you don't like the Google document because you feel like it can be edited, and you said you like a PDF. Is there a particular software that you like to use for that?
I mean, look, I'm not your tech savvy guy. I'm your lawyer. I was very comfortable with pen and paper until recent years. But just, Adobe PDFs are good. Anything that can be locked, Adobe, this is not a Adobe advertisement, but there's certain softwares where you can see that it's been locked and you can't alter it anymore. And I think things like that, they just indicate a lot of reliability and consistency. So then, even before it gets to somebody like me, it makes the discussion with that partner easier. Hey, I didn't alter this. This is a locked document, and hopefully we can, get rid of all this disagreement without, needing to involve a lawyer.
Okay. All right. Do you have any cool stories? Obviously, we're going to change the names of the people involved to protect the innocent, or not so innocent, but tell me about some nasty ones, some ugly ones, or some complicated ones where you're like, man, how am I going to untangle this ball of yarn?
Yeah, I mean, it's as varied as life itself, right? So, when people, they call on me, I don't know, one of the more interesting ones involved a co-op. You had some people in the Bay Area, and, they were kind of into, less traditional lifestyles, and they wanted to buy a co-op and own it as friends. I thought that was really interesting, and there wasn't necessarily the best agreement, and then there was parents involved investing in the money or investing in the property, and it's like, wow, you have all these different parties involved and not a clear way to work through it that doesn't involve a lot of time and expense. The co-op, I think, is kind of the most interesting as an approach, but you have people who, people talk about the crazy ex-girlfriend. I had a client, and his girlfriend literally, had kind of a mental health issue, and he's like, I can't live with you anymore, and I can't really talk to you. You're kind of super unreasonable, and we had to get like the sheriff involved. And the sheriff came down and had to evict her from the house, and she kept breaking in. She broke into this house in the Bay Area 3 different times after the sheriff had evicted her. And we just had to keep coming back with the sheriff because she was adamant that she was never leaving. So it's things like that keep us busy over here. and really show the need to get away. That guy didn't want to bring a lawsuit. He kind of really had no choice but to involve the legal system, because you had somebody so far out on one limb that they couldn't figure it out.
Yep, that makes sense. So we don't want to look into any of these new agey, let's get 10 people together that are all friends and let's go start a compound. We're going to grow our own foods and we'll own the property 10 different ways and it's all going to work out. And then somebody sleeps with somebody else's girlfriend or somebody eats somebody else's tomato. And the next thing you know, it's bad. And they're calling you and you're like, oh, what did you guys, this is so messy. Why'd you put it together this way?
I mean, that was a fully organic tomato, David. Like that's everybody knows that's a no-no.
Absolutely. You should expect to have somebody sue you if you eat their tomato without asking first. Yeah. Any other cool stories or horror stories that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's just I think as a lawyer, I'm gonna urge caution and just say that none of us know where life is headed, and so just try to be thoughtful about it. I know there's I think actually probably the coolest story is one going on right now in the media. There's on this reality show Vanderpump Rules. There's a partition going on because of this cheating scandal. That's been kind of fun to observe from the outside. You had a boyfriend and girlfriend bought a house together, thinking they're going to end up happily ever after, and then what do you know? Someone is alleged to have not been faithful, and you just have fireworks and you get the popcorn. So it's situations like that are very common that keep us working hard over here.
Yeah, when you get hurt by somebody, which is going to happen when there's infidelity, a lot of people will turn to anything that they can to hurt them back. So sometimes that's bringing up secrets. Sometimes that's bringing up things that were told in confidence. Sometimes that's physical harm, throwing things. And oftentimes it's money. It hurts when you hit somebody in the pocketbook. And if you buy a house with your partner thinking you're helping out your boyfriend who's a struggling jazz musician living with you, and you put him on title to get him going, and then the guy cheats on you and you end up breaking up with them, you're thinking he put no money into this house, he did nothing, I was just being nice. And he's like, I got a legal right to this, I want 50% of it because we're breaking up, and you're stuck. I mean, this stuff does happen. Nobody wants to go on a podcast and talk about it. Nobody wants to go out there and say, I got ripped off, I made a bad decision. But it happens, right? You deal with this all the time. You're sort of the lymph node cleaning up the garbage that goes your way. After what you've seen, Elijah, would you recommend people to have partners?
Yeah, I mean, I think look, as people, we all need each other, right? It's just about, having an adult conversation about the way that the relationship is gonna work if things break down, right? And there's many people that have relationships that go on great for decades, and I think that's the ideal for all of us. But the other side of that is, hey, listen, let's be adults and realize, the divorce rate is what it is. People have been suing each other since time began, and so as a result, if it doesn't work out, let's not use lawyers or money or real estate, to punish each other, to beat each other over the head. Let's talk about how we can go our separate ways so that everybody, maybe the relationship didn't work out, but it doesn't permanently scar you financially for the future.
That's a great way to put it. I've noticed with investing, there's often a fear of loss or a fear of risk because the two are associated with each other, but you can't get reward without risk. It's guaranteed. If you don't go lift weights because you don't want to get hurt, you might not get hurt, but you're going to be weaker. You're going to have other kind of health issues. You can't have reward without some kind of risk. The idea is not to avoid all risk. The idea is to mitigate your risk so that you don't have any disaster that takes you out of the game completely. There's no poker player that wins every hand. You can't play only the hands that are 100% guaranteed to win. You'll never win. But you do want to make it so that you're not going all in on the wrong hand. You want to be, if you lose, you're in the game still. You learned from your loss. You're a better player than you were before. You can continue buying, you can continue investing, and you continue in the game. So thank you. That was a great point that you put out there. For people that want to reach out to you, they're in a bad partnership. Maybe they're trying to get ahead of it. I think if you're in a situation that's getting ugly, don't wait until it's really bad before you reach out to legal counsel. Talk about it before it gets bad. Maybe talk about some changes that can be made so that when you get to that crossroads, you're in a better position. Where can people find you?
Yeah, the best way to find us is at underwood.law. We practice law only in California. But yeah, to piggyback on your analogy, here's one for you. It's kind of like a car, right? You go in a car, you have an accelerator, but you also have a brake, right? And so knowing how to use both of those tools, when to get out, that if the car starts accelerating in a way that's kind of unmanageable, you have a way to stop it, and make sure that you make yourself safe. But otherwise, yeah, underwood.law is the best place to find us. We have offices throughout California, LA, San Francisco, San Diego, Sacramento, Orange County. But underwood.law is probably the mothership for contacting us.
Any social media that you want people to check out?
Right now we have a YouTube channel. I think it's called, the Partition Lawyer, on YouTube. But we're still kind of building that out. I think we only have a handful of videos right now. We're getting ready to ramp that up.
All right. If you're in a position where you think he could help you, reach out to Elijah and protect yourself and hit the brakes if you think you're going too fast. Elijah, thanks for joining us on the David Greene Show.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Real Talk Real Estate. If you would like to be featured on the podcast, I'd love to have you. Visit davidgreen24.com/ask and submit your question there. Also, please do me a huge favor and share the show with someone that you love that you think would benefit from this message, and make sure you're subscribed to get notified for future episodes. If you want to reach out directly, you can also DM me on Instagram or social media and check out davidgreen24.com.